Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Faith Unaltered. I'm your host, and I have my co-host Dale Glover. Tyler has started his hiatus. So, Dale, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Just finished. This is my fifth and final podcast this week, but it's a good way to go out because we're celebrating Canada Day up here. So
Yeah, we don't
Nice.
celebrate that down here. So, we got the 4th coming up. We have fireworks. I don't know about you guys. Do you have fireworks on Canada Day?
of course, that's what it's all about.
Ah, okay. Right on, right on. You probably have the little fountain ones, just like everything else bad in Canada, right?
The
You don't
wor-
have stuff that actually launches in the air. It's just little fountains that stay on the ground.
no, unfortunately, yeah, we had to save our money for forks for the new
And you get it from the tire shop that is like a Walmart.
Canadian Tire.
Oh,
Yeah, they have
gosh.
their own money system set up too.
Yeah. You all celebrate by eating that what is it, that chicken place that is from like Sweden or something, because y'all can't come up with any original things.
Chalet, yeah.
I'm teasing.
Get your Popeyes or
I-
what is it, Church's chicken. Get that out of here.
Oh, I love
Right on.
churches. I
Well-
gotta have my churches.
I feel that I do like Church's, but it's not Swiss Chalet. I'll just say that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dale's on his number 5, so he's probably going to be falling asleep in the middle of this. No, I'm just joking. No, yeah, I have 2 guests, very special guests that have been on several times. Again, I say this all the time when our guest returns. If you don't know who these guys are, you haven't been watching the show. But I have Travis Worth and his 2 weeks of Worth. He'll be on the next 2 weeks, which is awesome. I'm glad to hear what he's got
Yeah.
to say. And we have the Faithiest Atheist. What's up, guys?
Hey, doing good. Glad to be here, man. That opening's pretty intense. I feel like I better have a lot of good answers.
Yeah, you better, man. You got to make that open.
Yeah.
You got to make it more appealing by giving good answers.
Yeah. It's like watching a good movie. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I try, man. That's what I go for. I made that, by the way.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
intense. Yeah.
But yeah, so the Faithiest Atheist. Actually, I'm just gonna let you guys introduce yourselves. I'll let the Faithiest Atheist go first. I'm just gonna call you Rich.
Sure.
All right.
I'm Richard. I'm the Faithiest Atheist. I really only participate on Facebook and YouTube, so you guys can find me on Facebook if you've still heard of that. And I realize it's dying, but that's where I put most of my posts right now. And then my YouTube channel is kind of pathetic, but I just recently did a debate with a Ratio Christie guy from ASU, and I put that on there. So that's kind of a recent thing that I did on YouTube, and I hope to ramp that up eventually. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I've been on here 5 or 6 times. I'm looking forward to today.
Right on,
Yeah.
Travis.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm Travis. Ministry wise, I'm part of the Reasons to Believe team, headed up by Fazali Rana now. I'm part of their apologetics community, so I really enjoy doing that. It's kind of like showcasing a lot of their work, so I'm involved in doing that. I also do a bit of outreach ministry, and in my private free spare time, I have a love and passion for the philosophy of religion and the philosophy of science, and just like really diving into these deep philosophical questions and just shining the light of reason and exploring reality through philosophy. And so yeah, I just really love these type of conversations.
Right on, yeah. And it was very interesting when you came to me and asked about these topics, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think that would be more of a uniting conversation, and it would apply to all of us across many different
Sure.
fields, or even of worldviews. So I wanted to bring us together on that, and I mean, you came up with the idea, so I'm gonna let you guys take it away, man. It's the value of disagreement, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
A great show. So listen up.
Yeah, so I'll kind of unpack this further as we get into the conversation and how it's affected me personally. But basically, and a lot of this is come from Josh Rasmussen. He's had a huge impact on my thinking, like reading a lot of his work, because I really like not only his his philosophy and his argumentation, but also his approach. I really like his approach. And he would say that, there's a real sort of alethic value that can be had with philosophical disagreement, because what it does is it invites us to shine the light of reason onto our path to see if, it's a good way to see under scrutiny, when our arguments come under scrutiny, it's a good way to see if we're stumbling in the wrong direction. And it can also help us kind of shave away arbitrary aspects of our view and leave a more polished, robust version of it too. So it can actually help us sharpen and kind of home in on our view as well. And I think it also, with a spirit of charity, it invites intellectual humility and a chance for, for example, I'm a theist, Richard is an atheist. We could explore reality together, just using the light of reason. And it's a way to come together. We could look at why is there a contingent reality that seems to have so many finely met conditions for life to be possible, yet why do such terrible things seem to happen that, doesn't seem like a God would permit. And so these, these disagreements, invite fruitful dialogue. So that's what I really wanted to kind of focus in on, is the value in that. And I think I think it's often overlooked in a lot of these conversations with apologists and counter apologists. It's all about winning. Like, I want to just destroy, and I think, a more charitable approach is just a lot more fruitful for making progress, because that's one of the main things I'm focused on as well, is making, dialectical progress in the philosophy of religion.
Right on, Rich.
So far, I just wanted to say that I also made a lot of improvement because of Josh Rasmussen. I spent a lot of time talking to him. Yeah. And sometimes we would have conversations over years over chat. And so that gave us time to really think about each other's responses. And it was very, very helpful. I'm very glad I met him. And then I also want to say that even though I have my Atheist channel for the last couple of years, and people say that I'm good at keeping calm and accepting challenging conversations and all that. And I've come to be like a diehard believer in disagreement and finding people who disagree with you and being respectful about it. But I got here through trial and error. I didn't get here through educating myself on the value of disagreement. I got here intuitively. When I came into this game, maybe 2008, 2009. I mean online, because I think I've been doing this for maybe more than 25 years. But to be online doing it, I would say back 2009, 2010. I would be saying some of the most awful things, and it felt right. It felt righteous. And through trial and error, I got here to where I'm not like that. People like, say, Cameron Bertuzzi on Capturing Christianity, he's probably seen me as a follower of his page, for maybe 6 or 7 years. And 6 or 7 years ago, I wasn't like this. So he's seen, a lot of change. So I would say my first message is that, yeah, I'm this way, but I got here by trying the other way and just seeing that it's completely devastating and doesn't work. And this way really does work. So I think it's intuitive to say I want to win and dominate.
It is, yeah.
I lose, and it's counterintuitive to be this way. But you kind of corner yourself, I think, or at least I did. And then I started looking at the research, and we'll be talking a lot about that. And I won't do it this time, but I just want to say that now I see a lot of research that backs up that this really is the best way to be. It's not just being nice for the sake of niceness. It really is more effective to be this way.
Well, if you and by the way, I really like Travis is a bit loud, or
your mic's a little bit loud. If you could just turn it down. Just
I didn't want to interrupt. That's why.
Okay. How is it now? Is that better?
Yeah, it sounds fine.
A bit better. It could just be you. I think you might just have a loud voice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll stay close, farther away from
Sounds
it.
better now.
Okay. Yeah. I think I was just too close to it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Travis.
Oh no. Please go ahead, Dale.
I just had a quick follow-up question, and then I'll let you guys engage. But just out of curiosity, in terms of the value of disagreement, do you guys think that it's intrinsically valuable, or is it only instrumentally valuable? Whoever wants to answer first.
I think it could be both, honestly. because I think that it's objectively it offers an alethic value that I think is objective, but I think even in the practical sense, it's valuable too, because if you think about it. One way, because if like, let's just say we're having like a formal debate, we're going to be on our guard. We're going to want to defend our arguments and tear down the other's arguments. And it's going to, be strictly in that sense. But when we come together in this sort of environment where, we're charitable and we really want to hear, we're actually interested in what the other person has to say and how that would kind of play out. I think when we kind of let our guard down like that, we're more open to exploring truth, and I think that's intrinsically good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Richard, what's your take?
It's hard for me to distinguish between those two when it comes to this.
Yeah,
I think that we're all intrinsically biased, and I think even if you work really hard at overcoming one type of bias, you're going to slip into another one. So I think there's no way to get out of our own biases, which might tie into what a lot of Christians say about how you can't work it out on your own. There might be, some evolutionary truth to that you can't get away from your biases. So, from what I'm reading on, the books that I've been reading and the scholarship I've been following, it could be that the only way to get past that is to meet up with people who have different biases, and then hopefully something closer to the truth emerges from that conflict.
Richard, in that respect, one thing I've noticed too is, like you said, we all have our biases. It's just human nature. Like, it could be in a deep, even evolutionary sense that we just have this sort of bias. But would you say that being aware of that bias, being, cognizant that we tend towards that, can be like maybe a step in the right direction? Just being aware that we tend to be biased, just an awareness of our own bias. You think that
yes.
could?
Yeah. I think it's valuable. I just don't think it solves it.
Right. And maybe a step in the right direction, you think? Or?
Of course, at least it's going to be a step in the right direction for a particular bias. But then I think you'll slip into another one, in which case you'll probably have to start struggling with that one, which might put you back to the first one. And one quick aside is that there's some neurologists that say our brain isn't made for thinking. It's made for regulating the body, and thinking is just another thing that happens. So if thinking is really just kind of in service to regulating the body, then it could be that biases are inevitable. We just have to take the shortcuts, and our mind is going to take some sort of shortcuts. It's not so much about reason as it is about biases. And if that's the case, then get up with it. But I do think awareness should keep you humble. Even if it can't solve it, it should keep you humble when you're having these interactions.
Yeah, that's going to get into a lot of philosophy of mind issues too.
One thing I'll just say, like, my take very quickly. If is that okay, David, or is it just about their views? Okay.
No, we don't want to hear from you, Dale.
Oh, I knew it. Okay. Because it's
You're
Canada.
from Canada.
It's Canada Day, special treatment, guys. But I think I would say that there are some areas, definitely a lot of areas where unity is the ideal. So disagreement's not. It's not intrinsically valuable, right? Like on truth, I mean, we should all want to be unified on the truth, for example, just like God. But I can see some other areas where there could be disagreement, and that is intrinsically valuable. So maybe we are just designed by God to value different things and say, hey, I like art, or no, I enjoy a sports game or something like that. And we're just designed. There isn't really supposed to be any unity in terms of, no, art is really better than sports or something like that.
Yeah. I guess it could be. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Travis. Go.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of that. It could be that like disagreement itself isn't really what we're saying is valuable as much as some of the opportunities that can come about from that, like charity, humility, truth seeking, and so forth.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
and I was just going to say, I think what it does is it really speaks to that mechanism inside of us that longs for discovery. We want to know the truth. I mean, Aristotle said it perfectly, and I think that, when we're discovering it as a species and there's diversity in our unity, even, that we advance much better when we're in an act of discovery. So I've always believed that. So
That's interesting.
I totally agree. So I think it is both. I would say it's both as well. So
Right.
Travis?
Yeah, so I was also going to get into, what one way that it's really helped me is it's really got me to, like, kind of like I was alluding to earlier, to kind of it's driven me to really just basically fall in love with philosophy. It's really got me heavy into philosophy, and it shaped a lot of my current, like, metaphysical and even theological views, because what it was is it's not, to be clear, this isn't apologetics as much as it's just Christian philosophy. I love Christian philosophy, and where it's kind of differentiates from just purely apologetics is it's helped me, when I see, like, the best atheological arguments, like, let's say divine hiddenness, and like Paul Draper's arguments from evil, and so forth. What that does is, when I really look at that, and I look at the responses to that, like, it's what led me to, like, Trent Doherty's thesis of the defeat, like the axiological notion of defeat, and the saint fostering world, that God would create a world that's saint fostering. And so we can look at, are there narrowly met conditions for our world, to produce the highest amount of virtues, and so forth. So it's really helped shape a lot of my views. And even, like, looking at Oppie's criticism of theism as a theory in light of its theoretical virtues, and saying, that naturalism has, a theoretical gain. It was through that led me to kind of Josh Rasmussen's view that says, well, no, absolute ontological perfection is the more simple hypothesis, that, with no arbitrary limits, and so it's not going to have as many explanatory, gaps, and so forth. And of course, there are objections to those arguments. I'm not trying to just advocate those, just saying that that's kind of how it shaped my view in that aspect. So, but it's given me a stronger sort of confidence even in theism, and it's kind of led me to, get deep into philosophy, and to hold, like, these views from people like Rasmussen, Trent Doherty, Rob Koons, Alexander Proust. It's really, it's been the mechanism that drove me to really dive deep into Christian philosophy, and I'm just so thankful that I have.
Yeah, so I was going to ask Rich. Hey, Rich, I mean, you just heard what Travis said. How does this, how has it enhanced your worldview in a way,
Yeah. So, like I said, at first it was just, it made my, I'll say the word ministry, because even though I'm not a Christian, I was raised Southern Baptist, so I still kind of use Southern Baptist language. But I'll say that, once I realized I could start a page and be good at this, that was through trial and error. But from studying about how we get along, how people get along, and the cognition and the neurology of how we get along, I just came to see that really bouncing ideas off of each other might be the only way to get closer to the truth. And also, because I believe in something like naturalism or evolution, although I realize there's a lot of unanswered questions there, I don't think that we optimize towards truth so much as we optimize towards survival. And sometimes truth is going to come in there. So, like, for instance, we have air conditioning and satellites. There's no way we would have had those if we couldn't reach the truth. So it takes some work, but we can reach the truth. Then for a lot of things, we're wrong, and even though we're certain we're wrong about things. So I've always said that, yeah, we can reach the truth, but it's not easy. And then, case in point, the scientific method was created by people who said, okay, look, we're very, very certain about things, but we're going to have a mandatory foundation for demonstration, for empirical demonstration. No matter how certain we are, we're going to have to find a way to demonstrate. And from that came microscopes and telescopes and more fierce methodologies for medicine and things like that. It required demonstration. And that's not a stab at theism, because most of those guys who started the scientific method were theists. So there's something about that it took 300,000 years of human existence before enough guys got together and said, "Hey guys, we're going to have to find a way around the certainty that we all have." And when they agreed on that, and they agreed on those standards, we got to things like air conditioning and satellites. So, just from my worldview, I'm like, if we want to sit, like here I am in Arizona, it's 110 degrees outside, and it's not here as I'm talking to you guys. If we want to live in that kind of world, we're going to have to be able to find some ways around these biases of ours. So for me, there's the value there.
I have an interesting question. So let's flip the script here. So obviously associated with disagreement, there are a lot of disvalues that come up, bad things that come up. It inculcates bad character traits, and it leads to wars and all this stuff. So how do you guys kind of weigh the pros and cons of the various values and disvalues to try to say, well, overall, I think disagreement is worth it?
Well, I think there's sort of a difference in where we're coming from, I think, in regards to where that question. Because when I say that it's valuable, what I'm doing is I'm saying that it has that potentiality to be, that it doesn't have to be disvaluable. What I want to do is increase more people to see the value of that people like Josh Rasmussen and others take, and Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross is really good about this too, to sort of take this approach, because I do see that the negative effects of disagreement are what are prevalent. That's especially on social media. That's just prevalent. So what I'm wanting to do is, kind of offer, this as a way to sort of change people's minds. Say, no, if we approach it this way, there can be we can epistemically tease out value from it. But case in point, the way it is, no, it's you can just look on social media and see the negative impacts of it.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to offer a clarifying moment here too, because if you just look at all of human history, you're right that a lot of atrocities stemmed from people who are determined to disagree, and that led to horrible things. But I think Travis and I got together on this. I think when he first approached me on this a month or so ago.
Yeah,
we were talking about things like Dr. Tor, his debate with Professor Dave, which may or may not have happened when you reached out to me, but things like that.
It had, yeah.
And either right after that or around that same time, they did have their debate, and it was just awful. And someone recently said nobody involved in that got any closer to origin of life science. No, nobody on either side. It damaged origin of life research. So Travis was thinking, and again, not using that. I don't think we were using that as our baseline. We were just saying things like that. But it was.
It's a good example, but yeah,
it's a shining example of how not to do it. And I would much rather have, like, there's a non-believer named Nick Lane. I would love to have him talk to James Tor, just quietly sitting in a studio.
Sure.
Both of them are equally skilled, and Nick Lane is a scientist just like James Tor. For them to just sit and talk about what they think and how they see things, and they could both kind of call each other on any shortcuts that they're taking without screaming. Right. It could be a gracious, and both sides would be closer to origin of life. But right now, I think there's an appetite for that screaming, and I think
right.
That's what I are talking about. We're like, let's try to change that appetite.
Yeah, and it's like let's say, Richard, you and I agree completely with what you said, but let's say you and I are talking about some particular topic, whatever argument. If it's like, let's say, a debate, I'm going to be wanting to defend my thesis and knock down any objections you have, and by any means, my argument, to go through. But whereas like a charitable dialogue, it's more open to say, okay, well, let me really get through what you're saying. Let's kind of play that out. What would that look like? If it should be the case, how does that interact with this? And I think that's a more fruitful way to explore reality, because you're more open to the truth that way.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, yeah.
So you think that this has to do with the value within the potential of the disagreement versus what some people, because humans are going to take things awry in several areas, and I think the potential is where I think the value could really be exploited.
Yeah, I think you said it brilliantly, David. Yeah, that's a great point. I appreciate that clarification. Yeah, that it has a potential to be valuable instead of the current state that it usually is. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And if nobody does this, let's say Travis and I are pitching this idea, and let's say the world social media says, nope, we're not going to do it. And they keep screaming at each other. That is where the appetite is. That's where, where the money is. That's where the attention is. So if it doesn't work, that makes sense because it's intuitive. And I'm saying it makes sense, and that's just kind of where people are. But, we're hoping to make that counterintuitive idea to take over, because I think it is more valuable. And like I was mentioning before, while the screaming is attractive and people feel vindicated, nothing's getting accomplished.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're not even receptive to hearing, anything other. It's like an echo chamber. It's like you just, continue on with your initial conclusions, not even regarding, what was said. But I really, wanted to get with you on this, Richard, and sort of start this, as a proposition, because I see it as well with people like Josh Rasmussen. I think for the most part, real atheology kind of has this spirit of charity as well, and some other.
Joe Schmidt's a very,
yes, Joe. I love Joe. We talk philosophy. I message him all the time. Yeah, Joe for sure. And so, that's what I'd like to see more of that than some these like James Tour type debates that we recently saw. Is basically what Richard and I are getting at here.
Right, and I think it's better for both sides. If you're a non-believer and you want to. You think you've come across some ideas that should be explored in the theist communities, and then the other way around, if you're a Christian and you think the atheists haven't considered some things, I think these kinds of discussions are going to make them more likely to resonate with that other side.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you guys think, like, the implications of this are? Like, so let's say somebody is like, yeah, you know what, I think I agree with you about the value of disagreement. Is your goal just to kind of, okay, great, now we can make efforts to make sure we actualize more value, or are there theistic implications? Like, what's the
kind of I'm sure our answers will be different here, because for me, I think there are theistic implications, because like for me, it's what's helped me to have a more robust view of theism. It's what's got me into like Trent Doherty's view, because one thing that I frequently saw, Dale, and you may agree with this, you're into philosophy as well, is that oftentimes the theist side will sort of downplay arguments from evil and hiddenness, whereas the atheological side tends to sort of downplay theistic arguments, like the fine-tuning and other aspects. So what it got me to where I wanted to look at all the evidence with the equal amount of charitability. Like, I didn't want to be charitable to this set of evidence and just completely overlook this evidence. Like, even though I know I have a bias, I want to try and interpret all the evidence equally. So that's what it's inspired me to do. And I actually think Trent Doherty's Saint Fostering World does that, because we would expect he argues that we would expect to find the world that we're currently in, even given its temporary conditions. But so it has had a lot of impact on me in that sense. But I would say that even for the atheist side, I think it would have similar, because I think when you talk to theists and really hear what they have to say, from your atheological side, it can shave away arbitrary aspects of it and make you a more polished atheist, and say, well, here's what some of the best theists are saying, and here's and now that I know why I disagree with it, you would be more accomplished in your atheism and have a better, more confident outlook on that. Like, well, I know what the best views of theism have to say, and here's exactly why I disagree with it, and so I'm pretty confident being an atheist. So I think it would. It's not just theism. I think it would apply to both sides. So.
Yeah, I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that everybody has a worldview. And so if you have a worldview and it's important to you, then you should look into this, because I think you might be able to make more points this way, especially in this world of so much screaming at each other. Even though that's where the appetite is, you can have more success. And I have a real world example just from this year. I went to go see Paul Copan give a speech at Houston Christian University, and he and I know each other. So he gave his lecture on morality, but he didn't mention the Bible or Christianity. He just was talking about objective morality as a philosophical concept. So he gave his lecture for an hour, and it was very powerful.
I love Paul Copan.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. And because we know each other, I was able to walk up to him and talk to him for a while. And I'd been thinking about this for a while, about how to approach some of the Bible verses that don't seem like they match the moral argument.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been so many atheists arguing about Bible verses, and they'll mention the verses, and then the Christian will say, "Well, what's that based on?" And it goes back and forth, and it's been going. So I'm 52, and I've been doing this since 1987. I've seen so much screaming and yelling, and for all those years, a lot of Christians, it's just never hit them what the atheists were trying to say. And the way I presented it was, what if I had brought my two daughters, and they're teenage daughters? I asked Paul, what if I brought my daughters to your speech, and I had never mentioned Christianity or the Bible to them, and they had never heard of it, and all they heard was your lecture about morality, how there should be an objective morality. And I said, and then after they heard that and they were convinced, and I gave them each a Bible, and they got to one of those verses that atheists always talk to about, kill your kids if they do this, or wipe out this village to include the infants. What would that do to them? Because they're now convinced that there is this moral argument by this outside creator. How are they going to make sense of that? And Paul Copan said that's a really good point, and he said I hadn't looked at it that way, and he said I don't really have an answer to that. He said I still think theism makes more sense. You haven't touched my sense of theism or my sense that there's a moral argument, but he goes, that the way you worded that takes away this point about what are you basing that on, or are you reading this correctly? Just those words by themselves should be a conflict with this idea of a moral creator, which if the same author wrote the moral argument and wrote the Bible, then it doesn't seem like there should be a conflict there. And so I scored some points there with the Christian community. And not only that, this ASU Ratio Christi guy heard about that, and he and I had a debate in front of a church, and about 50 people from the church.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then after that, a lot of the congregation came up and said, I see your point. And again, nobody was converted to atheism, but they just said, now I kind of see why it's important and why you're not just being mean. Because I wasn't using my standard, I was using Paul Copan's standard and saying it's the same author, so there shouldn't be that conflict. So anyway, it made a point for me and on several levels.
Yeah.
And it was just being very, disagreeable, but also respectful. So I think there's value there.
Yeah. And, it sometimes it causes that self-examination, right? Like It causes you to dig deeper. Like I know one of the things when I first got into apologetics, I had a debate with my cousin who was an atheist that put, laid out a whole bunch of things that put me into doubt and had me struggling, like I couldn't answer this. I couldn't answer that. But I realized it's like, okay, I've given myself the last, 5-6 years to this worldview, and I don't even know why I believe it. So it did what that disagreement between me and him had, it challenged me. And I always tell people, one of the practical ways, and we always talk about this on Faith Unaltered, we want to, bring Christianity to, give it practicality for people, right? So they can actually engage with it and, live the life, So like one of the things that really helped me was like, okay, if I'm going to believe this, I need to know why, and I need to be learnable. I need to be teachable. I need to have that student mentality, that says, okay, I might be wrong. And I tell you what, guys, like I had to change. I almost had to change almost every system I had that was totally in left field. I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense. But that's what it inspired me to do. That disagreement inspired me and gave me, I would say, a hunger and passion for the truth, So
it does,
yeah.
And in regards to what Richard was saying, that's even helped me because I pondered that a while back as well. As far as like these biblical verses, I think Stephen DeYoung has a really good perspective, but it caused me to kind of wonder, well, because I love Paul Copan. I love his work on the moral argument, but I'm not a fan of the way he handles the Bible verses. So I really wanted to look into that myself. And so what it did is it caused me, and so I'm looking at, well, let's look at my tradition. I'm going to start with my own tradition. What does the Eastern Orthodox Church say about this? What did the earliest church fathers say about it? And so it motivated me to explore like what the earliest Christians, I want to know what they thought of those passages, because they're the ones that came up with the canon of the Bible. So it's like they founded the church and they decided what would be and they put that in there. So, and of course, they had this like Christocentric type view where it was allegorical for Christ and so forth, which, granted, a lot of people would disagree with that too. But so these things, because, one person might hear your objection and be just challenged in their faith and want to respond angry or kind of, whereas another person would be like, that's a good point. Let me like that invites me to kind of want to dig deep and kind of like search like what's going on here. It seems like there's there's a good point here. Like what's, and it should kind of invite us to think about it,
Right. And I think it keeps, from what I've heard from the Christians so far since this all happened, I guess there's been a lot of fallout from this, from talking to other Christians, just anecdotally from people that I've interacted with. Mm-hmm. They said it's just made them more humble and that they've appreciated why some atheists keep bringing this up when they think it's a dead issue, or they used to think it was a dead issue. Like you said before, there's people like Paul Copan that says some of it might be hyperbole. Then there's other Christian scholars like Greg Boyd, who was like, it just outright didn't happen. And it was presented under a cultural framework that's completely antithetical to Christ crucified. So he said it still belongs in the Bible because it points to Christ crucified, but it's not to be taken as something that was actually commanded by God. So a lot of Christians have said, or they've said, sometimes, like when I was raised in Sunday school, our teachers would say, well, God just gets really serious sometimes. You better watch out when he gets serious. However they put it to bed, a lot of people put it to bed, but I think some atheists are still bothered by it, and it was helpful to put it that way. And so in this case, disagreement did help. It just had to be presented in a
I think also that the Bible actually tells Christians to have a ready answer. I mean, that's kind of like the apologetic moniker from 1 Peter 3:15, right? Is that we need to have an answer and not just put things to bed. We need to explore these things. Yeah. I think there's this design aspect, and you would probably say it's evolution and stuff, Rich, but these things are there for us to explore. And I think we're a lot better if we do that instead of just putting things to bed and just letting it sit on the back burner, because then we're leaving other people out, and I think the best way forward is to have answers and or at least to be exploring the answers. This whole conversation reminds me of kind of like the Cold War, right? Where they were like at each other's throats. They had these two worldviews, two economic worldview differences, the communists and the free market economists, and command economy versus free markets and all this stuff. But in that time, we had this incredible progression, right? And yes, it was a lot of things were involved in that makeup, and I can't point to just one thing. And, we had, the Saturn V engine came out. We went to the moon. Right. Now we can look at a picture, the last picture Voyager sent of our small little spot in the stars. Right. And then on top of that, like Travis was saying about, like, you have to take a real look at tradition, right? Like some of the things that go on in tradition. And one look at the early church fathers can see a plethora of disagreements.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I've
that forms something beautiful, Yep.
I have I have an interesting question, but I'll off this topic, do you have something to say on this thing? Finish off or? No? Oh, okay.
No, I'm ready to move on.
Okay, so here's something that might be interesting. So, in epistemology, there are things like not just inter-permissivism, but there's also like intra-permissivism. So I'm kind of wondering, in terms of the value of disagreement, do you think there are times when one can disagree with themselves and that maybe there's
Yes.
value in that to some extent?
Yeah, I've got two answers to this. I always try to do that so that whenever I make a point that I feel great about, I immediately try to say, now, how would I attack that? So I try to make myself of two minds to say, okay, imagine me standing in an auditorium, up front, and I've made this point, and now I'm debate opponent, and I'm suddenly hit with that. What would I do to try to counter that? So I think that's important. And then I just want to add one caveat is that if I do that for everything, then I'm going to be paralyzed, throughout my life. I'm just going to be sitting there thinking. So I do that to some degree. And then sometimes I remind myself, hey, it's 3:00. I need to be, there at 4:00. So I'm going to stop now. So you kind of have to do that, but then you have to stay on top of yourself that you don't keep doing that, because then you won't accomplish anything.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it better myself. Like Richard was saying, sometimes I do this too because, like I was saying, I just have this passion for philosophy of religion, and so I think up like theistic arguments, and as I'm thinking up like the different variations of different theistic arguments, I'm thinking, well, from what I've read of the atheist literature, like how would I respond to that? What's the problem here? Does it seem ad hoc? Is it, offering the sufficient explanation and so forth? So, yeah, I think there can be.
Yeah. I was just going to, something you just said reminded me, no matter what your worldview is, there's going to be tension with yourself. There's going to be things that you can't quite answer perfectly and that even you're not happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are very happy with it, you might have problems resonating with other people. So it's no matter what you believe, if you convert, you're going to be trading one set of things that cause tension for another things that cause tension. So it's unavoidable to still kind of have questions and be uncomfortable with some of your own answers.
Yeah, I know that was really prevalent for me, this last year when I converted to Eastern Orthodoxy. There's a lot, there's a lot of things that I didn't know that I'm still learning, and this process I have to go through. So, I understand that a lot.
Is there? I'm interested in that. Is there anybody that when you say you're Eastern Orthodox, they start freaking out? Is there any Christians who are like, "Oh my gosh, you got to fix this because your soul is a nature"? Is there any of that kind of tension?
Well, hello to my family. They were surprised when I told them, but
because I just haven't heard of people screaming at each other over that.
Not too much. To be honest, the main pushback is with Catholicism. There's a lot more. I guess Eastern Orthodoxy. It's here in the United States, it's not nearly as well known. I'm not sure about Canada, but here it's not very well known at all here in the States. But no, I've pretty much haven't gotten too much negative pushback. No, there'll be some that disagree with our, like the icons and our issue with Mary. That's the main two things you might hear something about. But for the most part, no. Like Protestants have been pretty charitable to Orthodox. I think the main tension is with Catholics. Because that's where the tension seems to be the most.
Well, you guys haven't been watching this show with Dale, have you? Dale's done with it.
You know what? I haven't caught it, but I know y'all have been doing a lot of Eastern Orthodox. So I just said that, and y'all been doing like a whole series on Orthodoxy.
We did have.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have. No, we have, and there is pushback on all sides. I mean, Dale could speak to it too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like online, there's this thing called the Ortho Bros. So like these guys are very aggressive. So yeah. I have had an encounter with them, and it wasn't pleasant. So we've had some unpleasant disagreement. But from that, there has been, I think, some valuable thing and lessons that I've learned, regardless of whether it's worked for them. No, I think it's went over their heads. But I've actually grown a bit and learned from that, and develop my notion of being a real seeker and to be more understanding and stuff. So yeah, there has been some positive benefit and value that's come for at least for me, even if not with the people, the Orthodox guys.
You know what's interesting is my priest told me too that has a new convert. I'm not technically a catechumen because I was baptized as a Southern Baptist, and they're going to honor that because it was in the name of the Trinity. So I'm just like the chrismation thing, but like has a new convert and a seeker in the church. He encouraged me not to argue and debate Eastern Orthodoxy and try and defend it. I don't get go out of my way to do that, and don't be overzealous. He said that's one of the main issues he sees with new converts is they tend to just start getting overzealous. And he said he didn't want me like arguing about it, debating about it. Just this is a time for studying and learning, not debating.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's similar to we had a guy Troy on the show, and he kind of said the exact same thing. His priest told him.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they told us. Yeah. But anyway,
right on. So I do have a question from the audience, real quick.
Okay.
This is from our good friend from Spartan Theology.
Oh, hey, Ethan.
And he says, Travis, do you think holding to universalism helps you to not be as concerned with convincing people and do better focus on positive forms of disagreement?
I like that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ethan. Can you put it back? I want to make sure I analyze it perfect because it's a good question. Holding to universalism helps me to not be as concerned with. Well, I know what he's getting back with, like, when I talk about like natural theology, I don't do it like in the apologetic sense of like trying to convert and convince anyone of like the kalam or the, contingency argument and stuff like that. I don't notice that I would say that it's due directly to being sympathetic to my universalist sympathies. I'm not sure that there's a correlation there. I mean, maybe, but I don't notice that would be the main driving factor. I look at that as just that I think, in fact, there's a good book I'm reading right now that Christ defeats hell, where I just think, God will be victorious in the end, and that he will defeat even hell itself. And so, he will defeat all evil and sin and death and everything of that nature. But I wouldn't say that it causes me to not be concerned. Like I do want to reach out and share Christ, but one way, and this would be a good plug actually. One way that I do it is rather than trying to convince people through like that, what I've been working on is writing devotionals. What I do is like I take my love of Christian philosophy, and I sort of translate Christian philosophy into devotionals. And so that's what I'm really doing. Like how some people do apologetics, some people do like other things. I'm taking Christian philosophy and sort of translating it into devotionals. And that's what I'm kind of committed to doing in the future, that I'd like to really grow in doing.
I got an interesting question. So this isn't in epistemology, but I'm wondering from the value standpoint. So which one do you both, and this is a question for both of you guys, but which one do you think is more valuable? When we have pure disagreement, there's the steadfast view, which is where you guys know what that is, right? Like you stick to your guns, like, no, this is what I believe, kind of thing, even though you're my peer. Or there's the conciliation view where you kind of find a compromise. Which one do you think is more valuable stance to take?
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to my mind when you said that was something about organizational effectiveness and how groupthink can really infect an organization. So if there's a whole organization that's trying to get something done, sometimes groupthink can cause harm to that, and sometimes it'll even get people killed. And I have a quick example I wanted to bring up. I was taking notes, and then after I bring this up, we can jump over to Travis.
Are you sharing your screen?
I'm just going to read off of it here. I was in the Marines for 10 years, And these three things that I'm about to read out to you right now would be poison to the Marines. But this was three things that organizations learned sometimes through trial and error, and sometimes through life and death. Sometimes people had to die. In fact, case in point, again from the Marines, there's places in the military, like on a U.S. Navy ship, where planes are landing and stuff, and people are dying sometimes. They've changed the military mindset on these three things that I'm about to read out, specifically because people were dying because of groupthink. Everyone just had too much confidence in the authority, and they were so positive thinking that people died. So they changed to these three things, which ties into what we're talking about, disagreement. The first one is that instead of deferring to the authority, you defer to the expert. So the expert might not be an authority, might not even be in a chain of command, but they've got more experience. And instead of listening to the authority, you listen to the expert. So on this Navy ship, sometimes an expert in something can override even the captain. A reluctance to simplify, this is the second thing. You always hear this in the boardroom. It's like, hey, break it down for me in one or two sentences. And if it's something that's really important and complex, then this organization will say, no, we're not going to simplify it. We're going to keep it complex because it's a complex issue. And then the third and final one is to have a preoccupation for failure, like a worst case scenario mindset. Instead of saying, hey, things are going to be great, go team, you're always thinking, what's the worst that can happen? So in this case, I think the ability to step up within a group of peers and to say, wait a minute, I know that the authority says this, but here's what an expert says. Or I know we want to keep this simple, but this is complex. Or to say, I know we want to say go team, but this could really be a problem. That can really save lives. So in this particular case, I would say that within peers, sometimes it's actually mandatory to be able to speak up, and sometimes intuitively that's not going to be welcome. So yeah, that came to mind when you mentioned that question.
Awesome.
And I guess I wanted to. I was looking at the chat here with regards to what my buddy Ethan was saying, that it adds a level of tension to atheist versus Christian conversations if you believe that if the atheist doesn't change their mind, they will. Yeah. So in that sense, Ethan, yeah, I do get what you're saying. Yeah, I don't think there's that level of tension. Yeah, I was sorry about that earlier. I didn't know the exact context, but I appreciate your clarification. And in that sense, yeah, I would say that there is less tension there, although that may not be the complete driving factor of why I don't try to convince people with natural theology. That would be, a level of tension that's not there otherwise. So,
to be honest, because I do go for a quarantine model of hell and stuff, so I do believe that hell is a place. And I
think that's plausible. I do think, just to clarify, I think there are two live options. I think the quarantine model where it's separation, like by autonomous choice, where God says, if you don't want to be with me, you don't have to be with me. I think that's a live option. I think on the other hand, that God will just defeat the suffering and it will end in a reconciliation. I think both are live options. It's just the way I view it is sort of abductively or inductively, rather. Like given these two scenarios, I'm kind of leaning this more way towards universalism. So I do think that's a live option too. So I'm not a dogmatic universalist, just to be clear.
Awesome. Yeah. And basically, my point, though, like I don't, at least with me, I don't find that there is a tension with it. I think it, as long as being respectful and saying, like, Shabir Ali, I remember, we were talking about hell or something at Tim Hortons, best donut shop. It's from Canada, of course. But anyways, like we were talking about hell, and the Islamic notion of hell is kind of like a torture chamber. But
yeah, like Dante's Inferno.
Kind of like Dante's Inferno and stuff. And, I didn't feel offended. Like, this is what he believes. Let's talk about it. Is it true or not? And is it immoral or not and stuff, and we can talk about that.
Well, one thing that kind of, and this is in regards to what Richard and I are kind of advocating here, is when we're passionate, like, for example, I'm passionate about philosophy, but when we have like an emotional attachment to some belief and we talk about it and it gets offered up for scrutiny, it's, we just have, deep within us, we're going to react emotionally. So I think, it's kind of best to be prepared for that kind of dialogue beforehand, and to be aware of that. And I think that should sort of invite some extra charity. But that's a factor that I think needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Good point. Yeah.
Right on. Well, guys, we're at the hour mark. Have you guys want to move on to the next topic, or do you think you've covered just about everything?
That's about all I had. Just this short presentation of how we can kind of tease out a value from disagreement instead of it having to be like the James Tour debate scenario.
Right on, Rich.
I wanted to add one more experiment or study that I don't have to use for notes. Again, within organizations, sometimes when they have like a group project and a bunch of people get together to accomplish something, sometimes they'll put somebody in there that's like a secret facilitator. And that facilitator's job is to challenge everybody, just universally, no matter what they say, even if the secret facilitator agrees with them, to still challenge them. And it's like that secret facilitator keeps groupthink from happening, and they become more effective when he's in there. But another interesting thing is that at the end of the project, once they succeed, the group universally hates him. So the group is like, hey, we did great. If we could just get rid of this guy next time, we'll do better. So they hate him for doing it. But that's why he's secret. Well, of course, he's not secret because he disagrees, but they just think he's being a jerk. But the organization hides the fact that they put him in there on purpose, because they actually end up being more effective. So being the guy who's going to speak up and challenge people, it just helps with your biases. It makes the group try more hard to make sure that they're actually true, and if they get disproven, to accept it more easily, even
that's
though they're happy about it. So that's there's monetary value and disagreement there. So I wanted to throw that out there too.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's and it's a good thing, because it gets the conversation from that tunnel vision way to be like, to challenge them, and I think that's a huge value as well. So
yeah.
You have anything on that, Dale?
No, I think they said it pretty well. So yeah.
All right, Travis, I know you're about to say something.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, if anyone's interested, I have this book here, The Inner Witness of the Holy Spirit. It's available on Amazon.
Are you plugging yourself?
Yeah. So
Go for it.
It's kind of like what I was saying earlier. What I do, and this is my first book, and I'm actually about to start working on another too. But in this book, I take philosophical concepts like the argument from religious experience, like axiology, and even some like Old Testament temple theology, and I apply it devotionally. I kind of look at how this applies to the devotional aspect of our lives. And so if anyone wants to check that out, it's a devotional where I take Christian philosophy and kind of apply it in a devotional sense. And so, yeah, other than that, I really appreciate my time here. I wanted to get together, with Richard on this, because this is something that I actually do care about and I really believe in, and just wanted to put it out there on offer.
I also wanted to say before we close out that there's an aspect to the individual aspect of this, somebody that would get the value out of it, and I think it has to do a lot with that person's attitude about. I always say this, and even Tyler picked up on this, is that people want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. Right. So sure. I think there's this aspect, and I really try to bring that to Faith Unaltered with all our guests, and I've had tremendous success bringing multiple guests back on because they like the atmosphere. And that is an atmosphere of like, say, look, I care about what you have to say, and I care about you as a person, I don't know you very well. And sometimes it's the first time maybe me and you met, but I want to provide that facility to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take you seriously. I'm going to absorb what you have to say. I might not have a ready answer, with what you're going to say. And I'm going to be teachable, learnable, and caring. So I think that's kind of like how we have to go about it as people to make this a real practical a real practical life choice, in how we approach disagreement, not only with shows like this, but in every aspect of life.
Yeah, and remember, there's like nothing whatsoever wrong with saying, "I don't know, that's interesting. Let me think about that." It's not like you have to just give an answer like it's okay to not just I do that quite frequently. I'm like, and even if I think I know, I'm like, well, let me think about that because I'd actually like to. There are some other options here. Like I'm not sure. I don't have a ready answer. I would need to really dive into that. To answer. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say I've got friends that I disagree with completely, but we understand each other so well that at this point, if I see something that I know that they'll like, even if I completely disagree with it, I can send it to them and say, "Oh, dude, you're going to love this." Like the movie Nefarious that came out a couple of months ago. It teaches that demons are real. It's a Christian movie. It's very well done, Christian movie. But it teaches that demons are real, which I think is dangerous. But I knew a Christian who absolutely thinks that they are real, and he didn't know about this movie. So when I called him and said, "Hey, go check out this movie," he was so happy. So I think that helps to kind of understand other people, and even if you don't agree, you can find something that they might enjoy, and they appreciate that you can understand that about them and share something that they would enjoy.
Right on. Well, guys, I mean, we could jump into closing remarks here. Rich, I'll let you continue on that thread. Again, just let everybody know where they can find you and
right.
Any closing remarks you got.
Okay, really, my only two things is I said it before, Facebook and YouTube, Atheist. So far, I think I'm the only one with that name on Facebook and YouTube. I'm on Facebook a lot, but if you go to YouTube, that earlier debate that I was talking about recently with the Ratio Christie guy from ASU, that's on my YouTube channel. So go check that out and listen to that debate. We didn't yell, we didn't scream at each other. It was very well done. We obeyed the rules. So go check me out there. If you guys put my link to my channel in the description later, I would appreciate it.
Will do. Travis, any other closing remarks? I know you kind of already plugged yourself, so.
Well, I was going to say, I do a lot of work with the Reasons to Believe Apologetics Ministry. So if you're interested in science faith issues, I think they're top notch. I really do think their work is valuable, and they're all so charitable, especially Hugh Fuzz. They're really charitable.
Don't forget their publicists are amazingly charitable. They will respond to you right away. I mean, within an hour. So I mean, it's awesome. They have some of the best.
I follow them, and they are they're very charitable.
They are. I really love Hugh. He's like an older version of Josh Rasmussen. But yeah, so basically, other than that, I do have a Facebook account, Travis Worth. That's probably the best place to find me when it comes to like philosophy, because I devote that little Facebook account is mainly my philosophical and theological talks. That's mainly what I do with that Facebook account is that. So you frequently share my thoughts on there, and so yeah.
Right on. Well, Dale, you have anything else to close out with here? Anything else coming up for Real Seekers as well?
No. Next week, I just have the show that we're doing with Travis and Ben Watkins.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
So yeah, guys, next week we'll have Travis back, and this conversation will probably take a little longer because they're going to be talking about value and theism. So that's going to be a really cool discussion. So be ready to hear that next week.
I kind of jumped the gun when I asked about that, did I? So.
No, you're good. You're good. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. It's been a great conversation. I've had a blast. It's been just cool to sit here and talk about this stuff with you guys, and even provide some input on it as well. And from my perspective, and it's been really great. So I thank you guys for being here. To the audience, thank you for participating in tonight's show. I mean, we had some good questions out there. And until next time, guys, as our good esteemed colleague Tyler would say, good night, God bless, and stay like Christ.